Yo, so this is Mercy, and I'm here today, or same day, depends on when you watch this, making probably the last video on the Verse history saga. Anyways, today we'll include Michael, or the director as you know him, as a cameo, and he will speak in the most. He'll be the biggest part of this video as he breaks down more of the Verse history for me and gives his take on what happened with him and what happened with his faction and stuff in the roleplay. Let's get Michael right into the meat of things, and I will wrap this up after you listen to him speak. This will be the longest video probably out of them all, and I will I will compile all of the videos in one after this, and it'll probably be like 40, 50 minutes long. All right, Michael, take it away.
OG members that's still sticking around for VERS. I've been trying to help Mercy a lot with a lot of the things in the background, trying to give him ideas. I've given him a bunch of them in my free time. I don't do much actually server stuff. I just usually pitch. But to start off, I guess since I'm doing the backstory on VERS 2, my perspective, uh, I should start with how it started out in uh, the beginning, like when it was created. So when the server started out, it was honestly just a bunch of the old OGs of the VERS 1 trying to make up a new RP server, because the main thing we liked about all of the server was the roleplay. We didn't want the whole thing to be stained by Cranters and his whole drama, and it worked out pretty well, just as Mercy said a while back. Um, so I think it went well up until the RP actually, like, for me, it actually really started way back, and Michael was just in the lab. This was back when it was just lab wide instead of the whole fucking place, because just like in verse 1, for a little bit at the start, it was just about the lab. And it was fine. I liked it. But the only problem, it was the start of the problems with, I guess, a rivalry between me and basically all of the OGs. Because all of them were kind of just corrupt. That's toxic. And it took so long for anyone to notice. I won't blame. I'm not gonna blame anyone though. So where it started in the roleplay was Mason. Basically, he added his lore, and I thought it was already kind of sketchy because he was the only character that actually like survived the reset for some reason, and no one really knew why he did that. But then he went through, and where it started out, the problems were was when Michael and Mason first met, which wasn't. I mean, it wasn't bad, and I didn't think it was bad in the first place. I did have a few problems back then because I was still young, way younger than I am now. Uh, like the fact that the character Michael was really bland back then. More bland than it was near the end of this verse 2.5. He was just lazy, monotone, worse than Cranchers almost in his roleplay. So I don't blame Mason when he started to hate me because of it, but I do at the same time because he hated me out of the roleplay for basically being bland in the roleplay. And he every time people did something in the roleplay, it doesn't matter if it was actually good or bad, whatever. He took it to heart. He took it personal, like really personal. And so he would basically bully. This is where the toxicity started in verse 2.5. It was apparently with me, I think. Um, it would happen especially in calls where basically I would join and he would just be an asshole and start arguments with me. Same thing would happen in roleplay where he would try to avoid me at all costs just because he didn't like me. And this it got so bad with me and Mason specifically where like Mercy in call, he was trying not to, interfere, but it kind of just made it worse. I still don't blame him for it though. Um, he would almost like blank us out in call all the time, every time we argued. and it kind of made it harder. But at the same time, it's should have been dealt with myself. Anyways, I don't know. Uh, but this kind of hatred also spread towards like John, or yeah, John and Richard especially. John is kind of like a chalkboard where whoever writes the most bold on it, he just sticks with it. And at the time, that was Mason. Almost all the time, it was either Mason or Richard, and all three of them were in their own little group. And I noticed that. Not Mercy wasn't in it. Technically, I don't think he was. I wasn't in it. No one was doing it, and it was kind of a tendency for Mason to do this, where he would make little like secret groups, and it wasn't great. This group obviously caused a bunch of problems, especially with me. It basically went to the point where if I did something in the roleplay one of them didn't like, they would call it unfair and not only tell on me on Mercy, but also have the other two of them back him up because they were a group. Uh, Same thing would happen the other way around. If I got something that they didn't, or they didn't like how I did something, they would group up basically and gang on me, which sounds a little narcissistic, but it's true. I don't know why. Um, and it happened for about the entire history of VERS, and it sucked for me because it was almost a constant struggle where I was trying to get someone to do something about it because I couldn't, and that was really it. But one of the biggest problems, including that whole roleplay stuff, was the Seacoast, because to be fair, their lore was kind of bad. I won't blame them, but like they would complain about me having plasma instead of lasers because plasma doesn't go as far or something like that. They would be mad at me for they it was a problem with John especially where like he had to know every single in and out of it just because we nitpicked him. He would get mad and constantly try to do the same thing we did to him, but like exaggerated obviously because he was mad. Um, so I think the best example was when they asked me what fuel source the Seacoast used, and when I explained it was the same thing as the hydrogen plasma, because the whole thing with the Seacoast with that they were supposed to be originally one of the most advanced factions in the like whole thing because it was semi sci-fi, but it was also apocalyptic, and that's why the Seacoast took advantage of the whole thing. But that's beside the point. Um, he basically, because of that, would anytime I asked him about fuel, he because of Mason, who's in the group owning Zyogen, and Zyogen was for some reason the most powerful faction in the entire roleplay. He's just like it's because Zyogen helped, and there's Zyogen fuel, and it was they just helped each other. It was like a crutch for everything. Nothing could be done. It took Mercy basically noticing this himself after a very long time for something to finally be done about them. He slowly noticed, and I watched this process occur as I tried to help convince him, that each one of them were just bad. They were toxic. They were horrible, basically. It was not fun. Uh, this it was a really slow hatred from them for some reason, which I'm not exactly sure why, besides the fact I was slightly annoying. I think one of the things could be chalked up to just how they were, because they were very peculiar characters in general, I guess. But I mean, the best part though is I guess in the end I was sort of proven right, kinda. Eventually, Mercy noticed that they were bad. Uh, just in general, they were slowly sort of phased out of VERS, and it showed just how little Mason cared, and it only gave more reason for that he shouldn't have had as much power. The main reason that Mason stuck around for so long in the first place was because he was so close to Mercy, and Mason just used that to his advantage. There was a lot of times where most of the stuff that he did, he was just allowed to do because he was basically threatening Mercy that him, John, or Richard, or all three of them would leave. And that threat just loomed over his head for the longest time, and it was kind of sad to see because, I mean, it's completely understandable. The fucking dilemma he was in. Uh, nothing could be done about it. Besides him, he just had to sort of break out of his shell. And I'm glad he did, because he finally started out his new server. And I'm very optimistic about it, seeing as the new HR team or whatever, the new heads are going to be eventually decided, and everything is slowly being organized, basically. And the outlook is good, because now two reasonable people, from what I've seen, me, or like, I feel I'm decently reasonable, and Mercy's alright. um, I think we can pretty solidly build a team that isn't so toxic and horrible. The main reason that it happened in the first place was just because of personal ties and the fact that most of the people that we did trust were such bad people. We couldn't deal with it. Uh, it's just the problem wasn't even with him specifically either. We both had that problem. It just took me a shorter amount of time, I guess, for me to sort of shed them off because I was friends with them for a very long time, Richard especially. And as we were friends, the longer time that we were friends, the longer time that I noticed that they kind of just kept the truth away. Especially Mason straight up just admitted to me that he was using me to cope with the fact that he was kicked from the group. Um, that he kind of just admitted in voice chat. He slowly just became worse and worse as time went on. Not only to me, just to everyone around him, and it's because he got tired of us. Um, I won't say the reason why he acted so specifically, but I'm just gonna say it was a reason with him and how he was made. Um, John, he shouldn't have acted the way he did, especially the fact that he was about 18 and he was probably the most dull one uh, out of the group. He was just really easy to manipulate, like especially to be manipulated by Mason and Richard. It it's kind of sad. And Richard himself, I didn't even find out his age until being friends with him about 2 or 3 years, and he didn't even tell me. It was someone else who told me. So knowing all this, it was slowly easy for me to kind of just cut ties with them, especially Richard, knowing that he was about 11 or 10 when he friended me, and he was a 13-year-old moderating the server. It got me very on the edge, which I think was completely understandable. And again, I tried telling Mercy, blah blah blah, fucking same story as usual. Um, Either way, that was my experience with the main problem of the server, which I would say is the OGs, the toxic trio or whatever. Um, a lot of the time, things were stalled or they were changed and retconned almost specifically because one of the three didn't like it. Almost always. If it wasn't for that, I don't know where the server would have gone. It probably would. The lifespan of it probably would have been extended by a lot. They also were very closed, like not even group wise. Like they would bully anyone that they didn't like out of the HR too. Anyone they didn't like, and it kind of made the server. It's one of the main reasons that the server itself was so toxic in the first place. They were the main powers that be basically, and they had no repercussions whatsoever because they had um, leverage against the main person, and I couldn't do anything because um, I wasn't any higher in power against them. So it was the struggle for about as long as VERS existed that I feel if it didn't happen, the server would have lasted a much longer time. But then again, I feel like the server does need a reset anyway, or did need a reset anyways, because, well, um, we kind of just made the lore on a whim. We didn't plan anything out. We just said, hey, let's do the exact same thing, but this time without Cranchers. And that was the whole thing. We didn't think anything through. That's what made it so unbalanced. That's why there was a person who could hypnotize an entire stadium of people. That's why there was a robotic cult that could one-shot anyone. And that's why Michael, who at the start of the roleplay could knock out anybody, basically, and was a bit of a threat, actually, in the roleplay, and he slowly became this joke that would get one-shot every single time that he was in a battle. Same one for the Seacoast. They slowly became a joke, mostly because of the main toxic trio or whatever hating them and not giving them any power. Because if they had any power, that would be allowing me to do something and kind of just taking away their fun. Most of their fun was in making fun of the people in the server. Their main fun wasn't even about roleplay. It was just about how much they hated the people there. And that's, in my opinion, one of the main reasons that it was so toxic. Um, I think that just about wraps everything up. This is becoming almost 16 minutes long, and I don't want to give Mercy that hard of a time editing all of this. So, um, if you want, I can do another recording eventually. But yeah, um, have a good day. Bye bye.
And that wraps up Michael's take. Thank you, Michael. Anyways, yeah, the Toxic Trio was truly the reason why Verse 2 and Verse 2.5, respectively, turned into a toxic, like, shithole wasteland that died pretty prematurely, basically. As Michael said, his faction known as the Seacoast was just ignored and pushed to the side due to bias and corruption, and it's sad to see something that was a genuine threat, a genuine fun threat, or a genuine fun idea of an enemy in the roleplay just be ignored because it slightly inconvenienced this toxic trio or the highest in power. I might have been the owner I might have been the owner and still am, but I was too scared to go against the trio because they would threaten me with leaving, as Michael said, and this caused me to just brace whatever they wanted and bottle up whatever I thought was best. And this was also amplified by my anxiety, and it was a big rabbit hole. I didn't really want to say their names in any of my videos, but Michael did, so it's whatever. But Mason and John were 100% the biggest cause for Verse 2 and 2.5's downfall. I suggest y'all don't spread hate to them because, as I said in the last two videos, we are not about that here. Urbane and whoever's left, we are not about that. So if you want to listen hate to them, that's on your own accord and you take responsibility for it. Anyways, it's so sad to see people who were seen as who's seen as friends, trustworthy people I've known for years, turn into this toxic group with this group mentality that just pushes away and just harasses people for no apparent real reason besides like just for fun at this point. And it's such a waste because the server could have been so much more if they didn't go the way they did. And it's probably they just probably don't give a single shit about this place now. Hell, they're probably shitting on me, you, and Michael this very second. Anyways, Michael basically described it all in this video. I really appreciate it, and I suggest you guys give him the credit he deserves. He stuck through thick and thin as you guys, and he helps me a lot with this stuff. So I suggest you give him his credit, give me my credit, and stick with us as we're going to continue. We're gonna work with Urbane cut off once I get the motivation. As I was gonna actually, I was just about to say this, guys. I'm still looking for people who are interested in idea crafting and reworking Urbane with me. Urbane will also consist of my new YouTube content as I go into gameplays and other different types of commentaries to spice things up. I might even do recaps of our role plays in the future to give us more of a name and have more of a fun community thing to put together. I love you all. I'm out.